The CFTC chairman warns Senate compromises could leave derivatives free to devastate the financial system yet again. Also, GM says the results of internal testing are in and mileage for the Volt may be even better than advertised. And what this deadly fire will now do to refinery production for Tesoro on the U.S. West Coast.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Tyler Suiters in for Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Energy Report. As the Senate awaits legislation to cap carbon emissions, the Kerry-Graham-Lieberman draft bill should arrive sometime next week. EPA says it is moving forward with its march toward regulation. Today, the Assistant Administrator of Air and Radiation discussed the agency's perspective on climate change during a speech at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. Gina McCarthy's biography on the EPA website reads she is, quote, a leading advocate for win-win strategies to confront climate change and strengthen our green economy. But today, McCarthy said there is ultimately another purpose driving GHG regulation.
Frankly, I think our Clean Air Act requirements will drive clean energy forward in a tremendous way. And we need to do that cognizant of what the costs are and the timelines, but we do need to recognize that this clean energy agenda is really about public health. Mine is. It's about saving people's lives.
As we've reported, a number of industry groups and advocacy organizations, as well as 3 different states, have now filed 16 lawsuits against the potential EPA regulation of greenhouse gases. The countries that blocked adoption of the Copenhagen Accord are now moving forward with an alternative climate conference of their own. Bolivian President Evo Morales says his country will host thousands of delegates from more than 100 countries for next week's 3-day meeting. Among the attendees, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, also the leaders of Ecuador and Nicaragua. Bolivia, Cuba, and Venezuela were among the half-dozen countries that prevented the Copenhagen Accord's adoption because, as U.S. negotiators said, they want a redistribution of global wealth. Morales is endorsing the creation of what he calls a world tribunal for climate issues and a global referendum on environmental choices. Back here in the U.S., a former top federal mine safety official will now lead an independent investigation of last week's deadly mine explosion in West Virginia. Governor Joe Manchin has tapped former Mine Safety and Health Administration Chief J. Davitt McAteer to lead this probe. Meanwhile, Manchin is now calling for greater scrutiny of coal mines with poor safety records. In the wake of the deadly accident at the Massey Energy mine, Manchin tells the Associated Press he wants to ensure that West Virginia officials are able to shut down unsafe mines and order immediate fixes without any delays. Manchin adds, quote, if you have a serious violation that can cause what we had, either I have the right to shut you down or you have to act immediately. And that explosion is already changing the safety process in one neighboring state to West Virginia. Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell has now restored funding, about $750,000 in all, for mine safety inspections. He says last week's accident is, quote, a wake-up call for his state. Global warming is now being blamed for a large glacier breaking off and plunging into a lake in Peru, causing what scientists say is a 75-foot tsunami. This all happened Sunday near the town of Carhuaz. 3 people are believed buried in the debris as a result. 60 homes are now destroyed. A water processing plant that serves 60,000 local residents was also devastated by the impact. An expert at Peru's Institute of Mine Engineers says this is one of the most concrete signs yet that glaciers are disappearing in Peru, which is home to 70% of the world's tropical ice fields. Scientists say warmer temperatures will cause them to melt away altogether within 20 years. On the other side of the world, officials in Australia have now successfully removed this coal carrier from the Great Barrier Reef. However, they didn't do it without causing damage that could take nature about 20 years to repair. According to officials with the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, this Chinese-owned vessel ran full speed into this reef 10 days ago, carrying 65,000 tons of coal. Officials used a pair of tugboats and cables to refloat the Shenneng 1. The authority chairman says the damage was far more extensive than anyone expected, with a long scar carved into the shoal and paint smears that may prevent marine life from ever growing back there. It will be at least another week before the full extent of the damage to the reef is known. 2 new studies will help the Interior Department make decisions on future offshore energy development in Alaska. DOI Secretary Ken Salazar said today the U.S. Geological Survey will review what is known and unknown about the Beaufort and the Chukchi Seas. That study will be completed by October 1st and will in turn include how exploration and production affect wildlife and ecosystems there, and also how to improve oil spill response. At the same time, the Minerals Management Service will do its own studies on possible additional leasing in that region between 2012 and 2017. Interior will also use information from 3 exploration wells in that area to be drilled early this summer. This fire at the Tesoro refinery in Washington state will now reduce operations there throughout the rest of the month. The Texas-based company says this April 2nd accident in Anacortes, Washington, means the refinery will not process crude, quote, until treating capacity involved in the recent incident can be returned to service. According to Tesoro, unit shutdowns will begin sometime later this month, but supplies from the company's other western refineries, those are in Alaska, Hawaii, California, and Utah, they will help meet company demand. 6 people have now died as a result of that explosion. As financial markets tumbled in 2008, unregulated instruments called derivatives were singled out as one of the culprits here. Now, a bill to regulate those derivatives is working its way through the Senate after winning House approval. The goal here is to force derivatives onto an open market. But that legislation is now accumulating compromises that would allow more of the derivatives to remain private. Today, CFTC Chairman Gary Gensler warned that large Wall Street banks who profit from the current system are fighting these reforms. But Gensler warns that without strong reform, nothing will change.
We also have to consider that we not enact broad exemptions for particular classes of contracts based on which party stands behind them. And I know this has been a very open and I think a very healthy debate around whether some end users should be out or in the clearing requirement. I believe that it's important to note, though, that the American taxpayers were not required to cover any market exposures on the cleared futures transactions. They were required to put in $180 billion to AIG.
Pleasure introducing also speaking at the Council of Institutional Investors today, White House Senior Advisor Valerie Jarrett, she said Congress must choose whether to stand with a few big banks, in her words, or to deliver meaningful reform for everyone else. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says he opposes the reform bill because it would mean, quote, endless taxpayer bailouts of Wall Street banks. General Motors has promised a 40-mile range for its Chevy Volt, and now the automaker says the car's single charge mileage may be even better than that. GM engineers are reporting as many as 42.5 miles on a single charge in their testing. But GM says, of course, actual mileage can vary by as much as 20% from driver to driver. These are the first range tests using Volts made from the Hamtramck assembly line. The all-electric Volt is expected to hit showrooms sometime later this fall. President Obama is among those now urging Americans to take action to celebrate Earth Day next week. On Thursday, April 22nd, it is the 40th anniversary of the birth of the modern environmental movement and also the 2nd anniversary of Clean Skies News. The White House has set up a page on its website with a guide for Americans interested in learning how they can help make a difference in their communities, as well as a message from the president himself.
I want you to take action in your home or your community, at your school or your business to improve our environment. It can be as simple as riding the bus or the subway to work, making your home more energy efficient, or organizing your neighbors to clean up a nearby park.
And just in time for Earth Day, a $50 light bulb will explain. GE is debuting its new energy-saving LED bulb. The company claims the Energy Smart will use just 9 watts, but put out the equivalent of a 40-watt incandescent bulb. Also, this particular bulb could last 17 years if you use it for no more than 4 hours a day. GE says the new LED is also better at directing the light downward onto intended areas. Back to the price tag, expected to be $40 to $50 a piece. It will hit store shelves in 2011. Wrapping up this Tuesday, here's a look at the day ahead here in Washington, D.C. 9:30 a.m., the House Select Committee is holding a hearing on the role of coal in a new energy age. Clean Skies News will be on hand. At 10 a.m. Eastern, Senate Environment Committee Chairman Barbara Boxer will convene the full committee to address transportation safety issues. and develop the next Surface Transportation Authorization Bill. Also at 10 a.m., back on the House side, the Ways and Means Committee is holding a hearing on energy tax incentives driving the green jobs economy. That is this Tuesday edition of the Energy Report. You can reach our team here in Washington anytime at this address, contact@cleanskies.com, and you can follow us throughout your day on Twitter and Facebook. For all of us here in the Energy News Center, we're glad you're with us. I'm Tyler Suthers, and you're watching Clean Skies News.